Episodes of our series basically talking about parenting, teenagers and kind of how to get it right. This, of course, Reach Out is Australia's leading online mental health organisation. It's for young people and their parents. And, of course, our practical support, our tools and our tips are all out there for everyone to use, just so life can possibly be better for, of course, teenagers and their parents. As a mum myself, there are sometimes I think, am I doing this right? I need some help. What boundaries should I be setting? Should my son be doing this? Can he do that? There are so many, books and tips out there, but today we have two serious experts who know their stuff. Our guest today is Matt Green. He's an author, he's a father of 5, and he's just an all-round nice guy, so that's pretty good. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Melissa.
And our second guest is a psychologist, Tighe. Joe is an internationally renowned psychologist and he's studying his PhD. He's our big brain today. So welcome to the couch, Joe.
No pressure, thanks, Melissa.
No pressure at all, hey? We're going to get stuck into it because we've got so many questions and so much we really want to talk about today. So I guess with setting sort of boundaries and rules around them, how do you go about doing that? As a father of 5, how have you gone about doing that?
Setting boundaries with children, it's actually not that difficult. 2 things to do. One is to have your partner on side, of course. That always helps a lot. Second thing is to get your children involved with the boundary setting. If you can have them buy in to the rules and the boundaries that you're setting there, you have a much better chance of being able to enforce them down the track.
And Joe, what are your thoughts on boundaries?
Yeah. Boundaries are important, and it's important to be able to reflect as a parent on what your parenting style is. If you're really strict and you want really strict boundaries, at the same time there's other parents that are quite permissive or very relaxed about the boundaries. That's probably not the best idea either. So somewhere in the middle where we can have some rules but a little bit of flexibility and the ability to reflect on ourselves as parents and how we're going.
Is it hard to find that fine line though between not having many and having too many boundaries?
Absolutely, and the only way as a parent, the only way you can find it is to be self-aware and look at yourself and question yourself and admit to mistakes if you make mistakes as parents, because we're only human.
Yes, we've got obviously lots of people with questions, and there's one that's actually come in from Alexis. How do you go about setting these boundaries but then making them stick? It's all good and well for us to go, you have to be home at this time, you can't drink, you can't do that. How have you gone about that with your children?
Well, again, it's having them buy into the boundaries is one of the key. Only then can you make it stick long term. So you have boundaries, you have consequences. If they agree to the terms of the boundary, then you can implement the consequences afterwards if they breach the rules.
Joe?
Yeah, I really agree with Matt. That buy-in is massive, because if you can get the young person to agree, they own it. The ownership is part of their agreement as well. It's not just a rule being passed down from the top down below. If they have the buy-in, if the boundary is broken or the rules are broken, you can come back to them and say, listen, we agreed on this. Do you remember this was both of us involved? The consistency of both parents is crucial as well, and both parents being on the same page most of the time, so that the young people can't play one off against the other or be confused around what the rules are.
Very important, and we'll talk about single parenthood a bit later. You're watching our Facebook Live, of course, Reach Out Parents. Please send some questions, comments, whatever you like, because we've got both Matt and Joe here to answer all of your questions. Actually, we have an audience question from Kwang. This is her question. I have 3 kids, all 12 to 18 months apart. They're really different people, thank goodness, and they do need rules and boundaries to reflect this. So how do I manage this without all hell breaking loose? When you have 3 very different kids, Joe, how would you do that? How would you go about that?
Yeah, and the Kwang, was it? She mentioned they're 12 or 18 months apart. So in teenage years, that's quite a significant difference. There's quite different rules for a 12-year-old compared to a 14-year-old, or a 14-year-old compared to a 16-year-old. So this is the challenge. But there does need to be distinct rules around curfews, or how long someone can stay out at night, or if they're going to have an overnight somewhere else. So this is one of the difficulties. Parenting is hard. We need to accept that. The parenting is hard. Parenting multiple children is even harder. And this is just part of the work.
So Matt, I mean, with your 5 children, I think there were a couple that are very close together.
My oldest 3, in fact, we had 3 children under the age of 5 at one stage. Luckily for us, they were all boys. So the simple matter was, once we could enforce the rules with the oldest boy, the other 2 tend to follow suit, which was good. But it's, as Joe said, it's being a parent. There's no manual to being a parent.
We wish there was, because we would all be perfect.
Exactly correct.
Yeah. So it's funny. I mean, with teenagers, and you've had teenagers. I have a teenager. You've got a 5-year-old, so you've got a few years to go. They tend to use their emotional side of their brain more so than we do. This means they sometimes do things that are a bit rash, or do things that are, off the cuff. They're driven by that emotion. So how do us as parents, how do we work around that? Maddie?
Well, inevitably there is going to be the argument.
Yep.
And for want of a better phrase, all hell will break loose. And the screaming match will ensue. But as parents, we're the grown-ups, and we need to realise that no one wins the shouting match. So a lot of parents have different ways of coping with it. I used to take a very long, slow, deliberate, deep breath. And only after doing that, I could calm myself down on the inside. That was when I could then have the conversation with them. And sometimes it was a matter of, look, we can't have this conversation right now. You're too emotional about it. You go to your room, you go and do what you need to do, I'll go and do what I need to do, and we'll talk about it in half an hour.
So Joe, as a psychologist, we talk about the reptilian side of a child's brain, or a teenager's brain. Tell me more about that.
And adults have that part of the brain too, a very, very old part of the brain going back thousands of years, but it's basically largely emotional, and it helps us protect ourselves, and we react emotionally to events that happen, like fight or flight. It's very important as parents to remember, the young person's brain is not fully formed. For men and women, our brains aren't fully formed until we're in our mid-20s, and for young men a little bit later. I remember being that young myself, and that involves risk-taking and impulsive behaviour, emotional behaviour, and young men particularly take those risks right up into their 20s. So it's important when these arguments come up about impulsive behaviour or emotional behaviour, as an adult with a fully formed brain, we hope that we can step back and reflect and just have that little bit of space to let the emotion run, and for people to calm down, and remember that these are still brains that are developing, and not developing very, very quickly. Not until 25, 26 years of age.
Exactly, still got a few years.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's a good segue. We've got a video. We spoke to a whole lot of parents about setting boundaries and sort of how do they bring calm into the house. So let's take a look at this.
I will probably take myself off into another space in the house and just do something else.
If you get distracted by something, so I sit on the couch and I start playing my games.
I turn myself to prayer. I do pray, but I do have my moments where I need to get in my room and sort of scream.
It's really important afterwards to touch base and say, hey, I shouldn't have yelled at you, I'm sorry I yelled at you, this is why, this is what happened, this is how I experienced it, how are you, and are we okay?
Sometimes you just have to walk away and let them go to their room or whatever they do when they're really angry, and give them a bit of space, and then talk about it again afterwards.
Get them to do star jumps in front of you when you're sitting on that couch. Get them to do star jumps, and you'll all end up laughing because it's so funny to watch.
Talking to friends also helps, going for coffee with friends and mates and other people that you will understand. But it's very important for me to remain calm because I'm in control, I'm the mother.
So some of those tips, I mean, some of those were good, but are there a few others that you perhaps have used, Matt?
Most of those I've used.
And And more.
And more. I've never gone to do star jumps. I'm not sure I'd be able to do that. But again, it comes back to the breathing, the mindfulness, that sort of exercise that I like to do. It just keeps you calm on the inside, and that helps you stay calm on the outside.
Joe?
Yeah, one of the people on the video there made a really good point about meeting friends and having a coffee. And often when we have children, we get so busy with work and trying to pay bills and surviving, and also looking after children in all the other time, that our social lives diminish very, very much, and we don't get that release out of the home or away from the workplace. And for men, it's very important to have just somewhere else to go, because women tend to network that a little bit better and keep those social circles that little bit better, whereas men often can sometimes just work and come home to the family. So it's important for all parents to have a social outlet as well, so that their stress is coming down and they're probably in a better frame of mind in the home.
So for those of you just joining us, we're of course talking parenting, we're talking teenagers, we're talking boundaries. So please comment, and if you'd like a question to be answered by Joe or Matt, please go to the question part of their Facebook page. Now we do have a question. Oh, they're coming in like there's millions of them. Ash, we have Ash. Ash has actually commented, one reason that conflict might arise around rules and boundaries is that your teenagers have grown up since those boundaries were set. Say, a curfew that was decided when they were 13, obviously is going to change when they're 15, 16, 17, 18. So how do you deal, I guess, with those boundary changes as our children get older? How did you do that, Matt?
I liked to try and preempt the boundary changes. My children, as they were getting older, there's no point in bringing you home from the party at 8 o'clock. You're 16 now.
Yeah.
Would you like to stay till 10 or 11? I'll pick you up then. And what that did was it generated a lot of trust both ways and respect for the boundaries that we were setting. So it worked well with the kids. They bought into it, which is what we were discussing before. And it was a nice, sort of surprise as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joe?
Yeah, these things that Matt mentions, trust and respect, are massive. And our young people won't trust us, our children won't trust us unless we role model, trusting behaviour, respectful communication to our partners, to our friends, to the community, and to our children. So if we can maintain good communication, I'm not saying this is easy, good communication and good trusting relationships with our young people, that will, when the changes occur, these inevitable changes that occur, for example, technology, we don't know what apps young people will be using in 2 years' time. That's hard to preempt those kind of things. But if we don't have an open channel of communication with our young people, they won't talk to us about these apps, and we won't be able to have respectful, trusting conversations with them about what technology they're using if they've shut the door to that communication. So maintaining the relationship and always be open to changing ourselves as adults while they change is
as you said, parenting, it's not easy. It is a job, and I think that's one thing that is so good about these sessions we're having. We're talking about the real logistics of parenting, and it is a very serious business. So, got a question from Sharon, who actually submitted this session. Sharon says, I'm nervous about my 17-year-old son going to parties. Is it okay for him to drink when all his friends are? I know there were even drugs present at a party recently. How do I figure out rules around this? I can't stop him from leaving the house forever, but I do feel a bit scared around what to do next. And that is a funny age. I can relate to this because my son is 17. He goes to parties. There is alcohol. There may be drugs. We haven't worked to discuss that. But, I do find it hard. I always say to him, don't drink too much. But what should we be doing? Joe?
Yeah, there was I'm not sure the parties you went to when you were 17, but there was alcohol and possibly drugs at the ones I went to.
Oh yes, there were.
The vast majority of young people manage to navigate this themselves. Sometimes they learn the hard way. They go overboard with alcohol or other substances, and they learn the hard way. But we have to trust them and trust their friends as well. If we know their friends and their friends' parents, we can have open conversations. If we have clear guidelines around what's going to happen if someone gets intoxicated, who will they call, who will pick them up from a party. That can reassure us as much as anything. My mother is 80. She still worries about me. So I think it's almost 80. So it's something parents are always going to worry, whether your child is 17 or when your child is 47. This is part of it, and something we have to manage as parents to let it go. Let it go as much as we can, and let them go as much as we can.
And I think, even as my 17-year-old, he had one pretty awful experience with alcohol, and I think in a weird way that has sort of taught him to go easy. So often it's about having that one bad experience where you think, oh dear, I'm not having that many beers again.
Yeah.
Not that we're condoning alcohol. Thank you.
One useful thing is a lot of online resources. If you don't always want to be the one lecturing or giving the rules, put people towards reachout.com or Headspace's videos or your young people, your children towards them. When they see other young people talking about some of the worries or dangers, they might listen or respond in a different way rather than it always being yourself giving the rules or the lectures.
Yeah. Matt, what do you think?
Well, I had...
you've got now kids that are in their 20s.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So I remember my oldest boy, I took him to a party. His friend was turning 18. He was 16, 17 at the time, I guess. And I said to him in the car, I said, look, there's going to be alcohol here. I know you're going to be tempted to have a drink. I said, I trust you. Just please take care. And I knew the family. They knew how to contact us should anything have gone wrong. And he still remembers that conversation now. He's 26 years of age and he remembers us having that conversation. And he didn't go and do anything too stupid.
You're pretty good dad, aren't you, man?
I try.
He's done good.
And something, young people sometimes get a lot of sticks. Something to remember now is that young people are drinking less and less than they ever were in Australia. So that's,
That's an interesting point, Joe, because I think a lot of the media that's put out there is, oh my God, we've got a bunch of teenage alcoholics in Australia. Not alcoholics, but teenagers who are drinking too much. But the statistics are actually saying the opposite.
That's right.
That's interesting. Right. Oh, and it's good to hear.
It's reassuring for parents.
Very reassuring, thank you. And for your 5-year-old.
That's right.
We have a question from Margie. How do you do it if you don't have a partner? And this now, I guess, comes down to now single parenting. When there are two houses, two homes, with no buy-in. You've got, you're a divorced father. I'm a separated mother of a teenager. You have teenagers and smaller kids. You have a 5-year-old. You are separated. How do we cope with boundaries when we don't know what's going on, perhaps in the other household?
Sure. When you first separate, it's not as if yes, the world changes, but all the boundaries that you and your partner previously set, I presume you've worked that out with your partner, of course, so there's no real need to change those. You had a bedtime when you were together, so that bedtime still exists when you're separated.
Yes. Table
manners, you were good, well-mannered at the dinner table. That doesn't change now because you're staying at Dad's.
Yes.
So it's a matter of respecting the other partner and respecting those boundaries that were set. Then the next trick happens though, as you're been separated for a while and boundaries change, children get older, hopefully you can maintain good dialogue with your ex-partner on the basis that it's good for the children. And if they're the custodial parent, because that's always the trickiest part, the custodial parent is the one that is dealing with the rules and the boundaries the majority of the time, you really have a responsibility to respect those boundaries and work with the custodial parent, whoever that may be.
Exactly.
To make sure the children are following the rules.
Don't forget to go, of course, to our comments section of the Facebook page, because we really do want to hear from you. And, of course, any questions you've got for both Matt and for Joe. I think we'll move on now to a question. We've got a question from a viewer, Prue. I'm finding it really hard to keep up with the things my teens want. Everybody he goes to school with seems to constantly be getting new phones or trainers or, whatever the new hot thing is. But how do I say no often people can't afford it, but how do you say no without you then coming out as being the worst parent in the world? Joe?
I don't care about being the worst parent in the world, so I just say no all the time. Having consistency with parents, whether they live together or not, really helps. So if the rules or the things you say no to are the same across the parents, that helps a lot. But, just being clear on why the no is important to you as a parent. We can't say what's right or wrong for parents to offer or give their children. I have my boundaries, and they're fairly strict. So no comes easily to me, but I also explain it. Whether it's a financial reason or the fact that all her teeth will fall out if she keeps eating all this or whatever the reasons are. I always give an explanation, and keep consistent with my no's.
Yeah. What about you, Matt? Because you would have had to probably say no. Having 5 children, it'd probably be more no's than yeses. I would think. How did you cope?
Been a lot of no's. Look, one of the tips I can suggest is to try and avoid the whole Disneyland parenting scenario. This is well known. I'm pretty sure that everybody's heard of this before, and that's where you become the person that buys all the gifts and the toys and just does all the fun stuff. That just turns you into a giant cash machine.
Yes.
And it doesn't grow on trees, as the old saying
Exactly.
goes. Sooner or later it runs out. So if you don't set the expectations that every time you come to stay at Daddy's you're going to get something new and exciting and wonderful, your children will respect the fact that they don't always get a new pair of Vans or the latest iPhone just because that's what other friends have.
Had a question from Larissa. She asks, I'm a step parent and want to enforce rules and boundaries, but I'm afraid the kids won't listen to me as I'm not their real parent. So do you have any tips for managing this? And I think this is actually a very big issue because we do have so many mixed families now. What about from your point of view, Joe? I mean, have you...
It's a really good question.
Yeah, what do you think?
It's a really good question, and you can see how somebody stepping into
Absolutely.
a family maybe a little bit reluctant to push too hard or set rules. I guess being consistent with the other parent and trying to be consistent with the other biological parent as well, and showing respect for everyone and backing up the rules that are already in place, and maybe going gently at first to maintain and build the relationships and gradually earn that trust. Young people want boundaries. They want rules. That's how they learn discipline, and that's how they learn to respect you. If there's no rules, there's much more chance of a lack of respect and things going a bit haywire.
So Matt, what would your suggestion be?
No, Joe's hit the nail right on the head there. It's all about consistency. It's very difficult for a new partner that's come on the scene because they may have different opinions about the rules and boundaries that you've already preset.
Yes.
So, you need to talk to that person first and get it clear together. Then there's the ex-partner, clear with them as well. And then, only then, once you're united, then you can put those rules in place.
We have another question from Amy. On Facebook, of course. What are effective ways of reopening the doors of honest communication with my 14-year-old stepson who avoids and ignores conversations with me because he feels guilty and disloyal to his own mother who has cut communications with me? Am I just trying to fight a losing battle? What do you think?
No. I'd like to think it's a great question actually. Adults need to act like adults, I believe, and maintain, whether you're in or out of a relationship, maintain good communication with the other adults and with the other children. As parents, when you've decided to have children, it's work that has to be done, and we need to be respectful to other parents and maintain communication and accept the realities that relationships end at times. We always need to put the children at the centre and focus on them and their well-being. And playing games with them or power games with them is that's childish.
Yes. Yeah. Matt?
Yeah, my current wife came along and inherited 5 children. So you can imagine, what was going through her mind, I'm sure. Now,
and you.
And me as well, it's true. What she did with our kids was just be herself. We had a house, we had house rules, we had everything set up the way that we wanted to raise the children. She was part of that. And over time, it takes time. Be clear with that right up front. It will take time for this 14-year-old to open back up again. But if you're consistent, we've used that word a few times, if you're fair and just be yourself, be honest, it will happen.
Consistency and honesty seem to be really sort of the overriding themes, which we haven't actually got much more time, but I do have, I want to talk about just boundaries around dating. I mean, how do you handle this, Matt? I mean, even when you're now 20-somethings, we're dating, like sleepovers, how do you cope with like maybe a 17 or 18-year-old wanting to bring their girlfriend or their boyfriend home?
Well, again, trust and respect. So the rule in our house was, sure, bring your girlfriend over. That's no problem whatsoever. But we have an open door policy in the house when she's here. And well, why, Dad? We're not going to do anything. I said, yeah, I know that, but I have a responsibility to your girlfriend's dad. You see, he would want me to treat his daughter a certain way, and that's the same way that I'm going to want my daughter treated when she starts dating, and that's. Wow, not far off, unfortunately. But it's what it comes down to.
Yes.
It's respect for the person, not just your children, but the person that they're bringing home. So our open door policy was what we enforced, and it worked very well. Yeah.
Joe?
This is really hard. I'm not fully sure. For me, I'm trying to remain open as a parent, and I'm willing to change every day, every week, every year as my daughter grows up. And I hope when that dating time comes that I respond the right way by her and whoever she is that she's dating. I don't have the answers for that one.
Well, another Anita asks, the rules and boundaries that I have in my house are very different to my teenagers' friends. So they often come home complaining that a friend at school's parents don't enforce the things that I do. So how do I, as a parent, do I manage that?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that might be you, Matt. I don't have a feeling.
Well, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it happened a lot. But it also happened in reverse, where I would know that my kids' friends were going home saying, well, hang on, it's a lot more fun going to Mr. Green's house because they do this, this, and this. So I think that if the rules and boundaries are fair and they're equitable and everybody's agreed to it, then that's how we're living our life. And if these people want to live their life this way or that way, that's for them. Yeah.
I guess we've got time for one last question. The time is just flowing. Okay, so what are some of the good consequences and strategies to use if my teenager does break a rule? What do you think, Joe? I mean, it's the whole idea of sort of going really mad, and I mean, does that work?
I don't think so. I mean, when a young person breaks a rule, they know the rule maker isn't going to be happy. If you get very angry at them, you're likely the communication's likely to end or get shut off. Try and be calm. You are the adult. You are meant to be calm and reasonable and able to communicate. So have that conversation. Ask what went wrong and why. And if what the consequences were. If you've said there'll be consequences for a rule being broken, it's probably important that you enforce those consequences and do it as respectfully as you can. Yeah. But this is going to happen. Rules are going to get broken. But don't let the relationship die. Don't let the relationship kind of end as a result of someone making a mistake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Joe Tighe, Matt Green, thank you so much for your time today. And it was really, I think we got a lot out of that, so thank you.
Pleasure.
Head, of course, to our reachout.com/parents page to find out more and more resources that can help you. If you want to continue the conversation with other parents, go to Reach Out and you can continue for as long as you like. Of course, this will be turned into a podcast, which will be available on the Facebook page very soon. And of course, November 7, which isn't very long away, we will have our third episode where we talk about teenagers and mental health. Until then, see you later. Bye.